Coach and Counselor explores how today's youth benefit from intentional, empowering adult leadership. Each episode blends perspectives from coaches, mentors, players, and mental health professionals shaping the next generation on and off the field. From tough conversations to inspiring transformations, we dive into what it takes to support young people in today's world. All right, welcome to Coach and Counselor, where we aim to create the most honest, helpful, and impactful conversation about youth sports development, one that honors both the science of child development and the art of coaching real kids in real situations. Today we have Alex DeLaet on, who is a massive, he's got a massive workload. He does hitting lessons, pitching lessons, fielding lessons, all at Elkhorn Training Camp. Also has a 14-year head coaching experience, about 6, 7, 8 years of it with Nebraska Prospects, along with Specs National for the last, looks like 5 years. Previously coaching at Elkhorn South at the freshman and the JV level, Omaha Suburban, and the Omaha Gladiators. Has a playing career as well, but I think that is quite the introduction. Alex, welcome to the show, and hey, have anything to add to that?
No, I'm excited to do this. I know we've been trying for past couple days or whatnot, so I'm excited.
Yeah, there's always the beauty of internet connections and sound and everything else that goes along with the podcast. So appreciate your patience and looking forward to getting started. I have a couple quick questions for you first, kind of just quick one-hitters here. You had the All-Star game that just happened last night. Trying to see if you're a traditionalist or not. What did you think of the ending? What did you think of ending it with a home run derby? What was your thought on that?
I'm an old school guy at heart, so I didn't like it. I'm a big fan of Kyle Schwarber, so that was cool. But and Cal Raleigh, I'm a Florida State guy, so that was cool. But I wish they just go extra innings, keep it old school like it used to be.
Yeah, I saw a replay someone posted on X about I think it was Moises Alou hitting a game-winning double with Tony Gwynn scoring, plate to plate with Pudge Rodriguez. It was, it was pretty awesome, but we definitely didn't have that experience with the All-Star game last night. But all right, so then another question, banana ball, good or bad for baseball?
Kid asks this a lot. I like it, and I also dislike it. The thing I like is they bring entertainment to the sport that I love. The thing I don't like is some of my younger guys that don't understand, the 7, 8, 9-year-old kids, they're trying to do that stuff in game. And I'm like, there's a time and place to do this. But as long as we're growing the sport of baseball, I'm a fan. So they do a lot of good.
Yeah, they do. It's definitely perhaps a bit of a double-edged sword, but they have an amazing following. They're doing a great job, and hopefully it can enhance baseball as opposed to, making it go in some sort of chaotic direction.
6th person this week to ask me that.
Yeah, I'm not sure. It literally just popped in my head, so I'm not sure why it came up, but it's definitely an interesting take on way the baseball direction is going. There's a lot of that going on in baseball right now of some interesting takes. Speaking of that, I guess what's part of your coaching experience over the last few years? What sort of things have been changing that you feel are really changing? Maybe one or two things for the good, one or two things, for the bad or for the not so good.
The last 3-4 years has been kind of wild. I kind of ventured into the private instruction full time. So that was new for me, but that's been going great. I always tell people, I don't think I could do another normal job anymore because I just love it so much. It doesn't really feel like you're going to work. So I love that. I love how the game's growing with technology. Some people are against it. Some people are for it, but I think more data is better. And then we can sift through it. On that, one of the good and bad things that I've noticed throughout the years of the guys is social media. It's a double-edged sword. It's really good for exposure and it's really bad for exposure. And for some of the 15, 16, 17-year-old kids, it's a challenge to kind of steer them in the right way of, hey, this isn't something we need to put on X or stuff like that. But for the most part, my players actually do a pretty good job with social media. So I'm pretty proud of them. But that, and then, I actually ventured. Oh no, go ahead.
No, keep going. I'll go back to social media in a second. Go ahead.
So this fall actually was the first time for me going back, and I was coaching eighth graders. I've been coaching high school guys for a while. It was my choice. I had a blast. We had a good group. But getting back into that youth circuit with the Bluetooth speakers and the snacks and all that, that was a little bit of a culture shock for me. But it was, like I said, we had a fun fall, fun group. So I just love how this game keeps evolving as technology and everything keeps going. So it's been fun to keep up with.
So yeah, I said earlier, you're definitely a workhorse when it comes to doing lessons. What's the different aspect of, being, call it a lesson guy versus a coach? What's the some of the positives for you in that level, that instructor level, that you don't really get as a coach?
Both, but yeah, one-on-one is definitely good because some kids respond different to just different styles of coaching. So they might have a who does a really good job, but they might not relate as well. And, they relate pretty well to me or whatnot. The biggest thing for me with one-on-ones is I try to be as positive as I can be. And I'm not saying I'm not on the field, but for that, I always use it, we're in a cage where there's no runs going on the board. We're here to train and get better. I don't care if you make a bad throw. I don't care if you hit the tee and don't hit the ball. It's that constant growth, which is a similar with team sport. But again, you're focused more on one kid. And one of the things that I really love with some of the kids that I train is just seeing them grow over the years. Sometimes you might coach a kid for just 1 year. There's kids I've been training for 4 or 5 years, and it's like, oh my gosh, dude, do you know how much better you've gotten? And sometimes those kids, they lose sight of it. So it's cool for me to get a front row seat to watching these kids grow and chase their dreams.
Absolutely. It kind of, when I was an instructor or a coach, I'd always kind of, being a Colorado guy, give that example of walking, hiking up that mountain. When you're looking at the top of the mountain from the bottom, it looks so daunting. And then halfway up, you have to kind of coach the person that you're with to just turn around and look back down. And it's easy to get caught into, what you still have left. And sometimes you just got to reflect and look back to where, everything that you've accomplished so far. And you look back down on that mountain, and it's a pretty cool way to look at it. Well, I still want to get on social media, but you brought up another great tidbit, which is, is there a way that, or advice that you'd give coaches to help them connect with kids that, they might struggle relating to? If you can relate to them a little bit better, how can you help coaches, better connect with them?
Yeah. I mean, that's one thing I really take pride in, as both a game day coach or whatever, just anything I try to do. But, being transparent and communicating. I've had coaches in all sports, football, basketball, baseball, that they don't like to talk. It's like, hey, and it's kind of, I'm a rip the Band-Aid type of guy off. If there's something that I think you need to fix, I'm going to sit you down and just say, hey, here's what I think. And some guys I've had over the years go, yeah, I don't want to do that. But we have that open dialogue, and then he respects me and I respect him. And then that's when the stuff can really grow. Again, I've been around sports my whole life, played, coached for a long time. The coaches that I always guys who communicated and were honest with me. I'm a video guy personally. And so I would always say, college, my coach telling me that I was with my arm slot, and I was just like, I don't get it. And I was afraid to ask that question, but I'm like, oh, that's what I'm doing. And I've fixed it like that. So, just finding different ways and different buttons to push, because every kid's a little different. Some kids I got to kind of get a little stern with and get into them. Some kids you got to kind of coddle them and just, hey man, it's not the end of the world. And finding that right button to push, which is something I feel I'm pretty good at, but that's something that, as I get older and older and these kids keep getting, around the same high school age, I'm like, I got to find better ways to keep relating to these guys. Cause some of the stuff I hear, I'm like, what? Especially music and stuff like that. I'm just like, I've never even heard of that artist, man.
Right. But yeah, that's great. And I know you do a good job with capturing video and helping promote your kids. He's Coach AD3 on X. If you're not following him, he's a great resource to follow from a coaching and a player development standpoint. Are you active on other social media platforms as well?
I got roped in a year ago to creating a TikTok. I'll be the first to
Oh,
say I'm getting better at content, but I still need room to grow. It was a running joke for several summers. My players would just, come on, get TikTok. I'm like, I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. And then I finally changed, and it's been pretty good for me. But I'm learning how to do video and stuff. It's been trial by fire for me. That's not one of the things
yeah.
I'm very good at, but I'm getting better.
So let's stay on the social media topic here for a second, then, and then we're gonna have to take a break for our sponsor. But um, on the social media side, from a talking about player development, and player development isn't just what goes on in the cage necessarily from a mechanical standpoint, and it may not go on just be what goes on the field. There's also personal developments and and some awareness, right? Creating awareness for them as to how to be better men or women as they grow and develop into the sport. What do you what do you what do you coach them on the social media aspect of kind of what to do and what not to do and how to be, how to better promote themselves?
So the first thing I always tell guys, we usually have a Zoom call or some kind of presentation with both parents and players before the season or sometime during the season. The number one thing that I always say, is social media is like toothpaste. Once it's out of the tube, you're not getting it back in. Um, Again, I've been with now for a long time. People will post stuff and then delete it. There's almost always a screenshot. I've figured over the time. So it's, think about it, proofread it. You know, people make stuff like that. Shoot, I'm guilty of that too. It's not a big deal. But the other thing that we do with our players then is that we coach them on how to structure, specifically X is the biggest one, how to structure, we promote themselves while not upsetting other people. Big one that I see all the time is kids tagging college coaches that aren't recruiting them. I talk to hundreds of college coaches every year. Not one of them likes it. So
Right.
I'll have kids, and a lot of it's just not knowing. So, just educating these kids, so we'll have a kid tweet out and he'll tag, Tony Vitello and Tim Corbin. And I'm like, bud, you're in 8th grade. These guys don't want to have that. We can have that talk down the road. And, most guys are, oh shoot, we didn't understand that. And just tagging the right accounts, I mean, you've been on the circuit kind of like I am, but, our tournament, I want to tag that tournament handle and then tag the mother organ. Now, there's certain ways that you can kind of create this web of people. I have several friends who have way more followers and stuff than I do. I try to be active and just mainly stick to baseball with my stuff. But just growing that network and the biggest thing for me, just was social media recruiting is these just have to trust you. And so our guy, they know that, hey, when I get an email from one of these guys, the email's structured right, they're doing it the right way, they're tagging the crew, they're not sending me a light tape with no description from, parents' email address, things like that. There's just, again, you've been doing it for a while. There's just little nuances you pick up as you keep going. And from a finished product, I'm learning, getting in, it's just ever evolving. And, again, getting feedback from some of these great college coaches. What do you guys like? What do you guys? But the toothpaste one's the biggest one.
Yeah, I love the toothpaste paste analogy. I'm gonna use that in the
That
future
too,
for sure. And I love it. I love it. And I love the fact that you're doing classroom setting, whether that be on a Zoom or in person, there's, education taking place there. And, like I said, personal and professional and player development is crucial to, turning these young boys into men and, the girls into women. So I think it's great that you're doing that. I learned this, from a college coach that, they rate guys like us, right? They rate, recruiters, instructors, coaches, and they kind of have them on a +1, +2, +3 scale and a -1, -2, -3 scale. I'm sure every coach does this a little bit differently, but they know that when Alex refers a guy, does he typically over promote someone or under promote them? And everyone has a certain style to that.
Mm-hmm.
So like, let's just say, if I was under promote guys, I think is probably my error, right? Is I think that, the game is really, really hard. And, it's going to be hard for this kid to take that jump. And so they might say, all right, well, Tony says he's probably, a mid-major kid, then he might be, a power four kid. Or if I think he's a D2 kid, then he might have a chance to be a mid-major kid. So, we all have ratings too. So I love the fact that you just simply are honest with coaches and honest in the recruiting process, because that's really, the best way to go about it.
Yeah. And I mean, I always tell my players, don't I won't do it, because that's my aim and my integrity on the line. So, give me the correct info so I can do my job with it. When we do recruiting, we need to be honest. Whether I had a bad day hitting or a good day hitting, let me know. It's not the end of the world. It's baseball.
Yep.
It's a long strung out game with a long career for most of these guys. Getting hung up on one weekend or one day is it's not the end of the world. I've actually had several coaches over the years offer kids after days where they go 0 for 4, 0 for 5, just because they like the way they hustle out of the box. They like the way they're a teammate. They like the way they pick up whatever, little things like that. I mean, I've had several guys, dozens of guys over the years literally go 0 for 6, 0 for 5 and just come in and freaking out. And then right after that, hey, we're going to offer you a scholarship. They're like, what? Like, we're not just looking for the stats.
Yeah.
There's several other things that coaches are looking for,
Absolutely. I remember I was in an airport line heading back to Colorado. I think we were at a Florida trip. It was actually for my daughter in softball. So this is a while ago, but I was in line with Lindsay Leftwich, who at the time was, assistant coach and recruiting coordinator for LSU, and just struck up a conversation with her. She was, great, very personable. And I asked her, I was like, hey, did you find anyone that you were looking for? And she said, no, actually not, and in fact, this wasn't really a tournament for us that we were coming to find anyone new. We were coming here to check people off of our list. And so, I said, well, what do you mean by that? And she said, well, we know that, the SEC is really hard and they're going to fail, and they're going to fail a lot. And so, we came here to see some top talent, and we came here to see if, when they did fail, how did they respond to that failure? Did they strike out and they carry that into their defense and make errors? Did they strike out and, throw a temper tantrum? Like, we wanted to see the failure and then check people off the box based on that. So one of the best conversations that I had, it's just in a very kind of impromptu in a line at the airport. And I appreciate Lindsay having that conversation with me.
Yeah, no, that's a huge thing. One thing that I'm a big stickler on is, when we show up to the field, how do we look? I mean, we've been at Lake Point and some of the, East Cobb, some of these massive places. I don't want my guys walking in slippers with 50 Division I guys here. I always say, don't give them a reason to not give them every reason to. So if one of their questions is, can this kid wear shoes and show up? Just do it. It's things like that.
Yeah.
And one of the biggest things that, that I hear from college coaches, but that's a big thing for me when I'm scouting and evaluating guys, is how do you treat your parents? Mom, I need a Gatorade now. I don't like that stuff, especially for my high school guys. I'm like, you need to learn how to hydrate, and you can use please and thank you. It's not hard. And so, when I'm watching guys, that's a big piece to it for me. And especially with the college guys, and even higher at the major league levels, I mean, they go through you with a fine tooth comb up there.
That's right. That's right. Well, I love that you say that, because I literally say the exact same thing. So that's awesome. And we're going to take a quick break here and give a moment for our sponsor to talk. So, but when we get back from this paid sponsorship here, I have a big question for you, and I know you have an awesome answer. You've had the privilege to work with some incredible kids, but there's one special story for you. So, the question is, what's one of the coolest and most memorable coaching experience you've had? Think about that for a second, and after our sponsor, we'll come right back to it.
As we're talking about the challenges coaches face with young athletes, it reminds me of something that affects every youth sports organization: the administrative nightmare that can pull coaches away from actually coaching. I recently spoke with Jennifer from the Riverside Youth Soccer League, and she told me something that really stuck with me. She said, we were spending more time managing registrations and chasing down forms than we were developing players. Sound familiar? That's exactly why organizations across the country are turning to OperationPlayerAssist.com. They specialize in handling all those behind-the-scenes headaches that eat up your time. Registration systems that actually work, automated communication tools that keep parents informed without blowing up your phone, and emergency response protocols that give you confidence when things go sideways. Jennifer's league saw immediate results. Registration time cut in half. Parent complaints about communication dropped to almost zero. And here's the best part. Coaches could focus on coaching instead of paperwork. If you are tired of administrative chaos stealing time from what really matters, developing young athletes, I encourage you to schedule a free 15-minute demo with the team at operationplayassist.com. See firsthand how they can streamline your operation. Visit operationplayassist.com and click Schedule Demo to book your 15-minute consultation, because when the administrative burden is lighter, everyone wins. Coaches, parents, and most importantly, the kids. operationplayassist.com, supporting the game behind the game.
All right, welcome back. Alex is here. We've posed a question to him of what's one of the coolest, most memorable coaching experience he's ever had. Alex, cues up. What do you got for us?
So, I mean, I feel like I'm relatively young. I'm 36, but again, I've been coaching for, 16 years now. I don't even know what the number at, but, so I've been in some really cool things, but there's one thing that just stands out above the others. Winning tournaments, having comebacks, those kind of things are cool, and I'll never forget those. But I had a kid that his name's Cale Fountain, and he played for me a little bit in the fall, and just immediately you're just, I've known him since he was, 11, 12 years old. He was a big kid, really good ball player, but actually seeing him up close and coaching him, I'm just like, this kid's a little bit different than every other kid. And that's not a knock on the other kids, because we have a ton of other kids that were really good, but you could just tell he stood out a little bit above, in my opinion. And so this was when he was in 7th grade, and I'm a Florida State fan by heart. And so I kind of knew some of their coaches just reaching out over the years, and through the College World Series and stuff. So I called one of their recruiting guys, Coach Mike Metcalf, who's now with the Tigers, I believe. Great guy, longtime scout for the Giants, Tigers, recruiting guy at Florida State. He's got a ridiculous career. And I just said, hey, I got a guy for you. And I know you don't recruit Nebraska very much, but I think you're going to like this guy. And he took a quick look at his video. And this is before the recruiting rules had changed. So, back then things were getting sped up a lot more. Now you can't talk to the kids, until their junior year. So it's slowed down. But anyway, we had talked and we were building that relationship, and this hadn't been done in Nebraska. So he was in 8th grade by this point, and he'd been talking to Tennessee, Auburn, and a few other schools. But he was relatively unknown because not many, SEC guys are coming to Nebraska looking at Nebraska kids when they're in 8th grade. But long story short, we were kind of working this thing, doing this, and it was just cool for me because I knew how big this was going to be, and not anything to do with me. It's more for the moment for that kid and his family. I've said this for years. Cale is one of, if not the best human beings I've ever been around in any sport. His family's been outstanding to me over the years. But as an 8th grader, he committed to Florida State, and we've shared over the years. But it was cool because, being on the front page of this newspaper, being on the radio shows, everybody was like, wait, what? What just happened? And it was kind of cool because we had kind of been working this for a year, and Coach Metcalf did an outstanding job recruiting him, and just getting to know that family. I remember Jane, the mom, I asked the question at some point of like, are you okay sending your kid that far away? And she's like, for them, I am. And so that was really cool. The only downside to the story is that Florida State ended up firing their coaches 2 years later, so we had to redo it again. He ended up getting, offers from everybody, and he committed to LSU, which is a great fit for him. But even the cooler part of it is he actually got drafted last year out of high school by the San Diego Padres, signed for an over slot value, and I was actually just talking to his dad last week. He just made his single A debut. Got a double, I think, on the first at bat. And just, again, I've known this family for a long time, so it's been really cool to get a front row seat to watch these guys grow and just to see everything he does. He's 6'5", 200, hits the ball, 115 plus. That can just ridiculous numbers, but it's the work he puts in and the way he treats people. That's what separates him from me. One of the coolest things I've ever done is, again, I train a lot of guys, different ages, young guys, old guys, high school guys, college guys, but me and Cale and Mike, his dad, and then his two brothers, we actually did a joint camp last December, which was his idea. And, you know, he came in wearing his Padres stuff, and he signed autographs for every kid at this camp, you know, and he gave them 3 off on a weekend. I'm like, dude, this is a professional ball player, you know, doing this for 9-year-old kids just out of the goodness of his heart. Like, again, that is just that's one of the coolest stories. And, you know, as long as my memory doesn't fade for me, I hope I carry that one to the grave, because that's one of the coolest moments. And again, it's for him. He accomplished all this.
Yeah.
You just get to watch. That's what's cool about it. But we
That's
definitely,
excellent. And I know
shook the
there's,
ground
you know, a little bit.
that went down.
Yeah. And I know there's a little bit more to that story that you definitely don't want to get into. You know, I did hear your voice crack a little bit in there. And so if you know a little bit about Gil Kale's story, there's more to that, and definitely some emotional things that he went through. So, I think I obviously I know about that. I appreciate what you did, for him and his family, and to help him through that, not only, from the, professional side, meaning the baseball side, but also as a friend and a mentor. So appreciate you doing that.
Well, and I mean, just going back to one of the earlier questions, when it's genuine and you don't fake it and you actually care about these kids, you'd be surprised how far these kids can go having an adult just in their corner. And again, you got to be genuine with it. These kids can be through if you're fake. And so, that's something that was instilled at me at a very young age of, treat people the right way, do it with the best integrity. And if you screw up, admit it and move on.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So, shifting on here a little bit, what's kind of a coach's, one thing for you that you wish parents, maybe better understood?
The emotional wear and tear and the time that goes into it. Obviously I love doing this. Anybody that coaches baseball doesn't really do it for the money. We do it for the sport and just the love of the game. But, coaching a team, the amount of times we lose a game and I go back to the hotel and I'm watching, shoot, did we hold runners at second very well today? Or just, the constant chase to get these guys as good as you can. People don't understand the wear and tear that goes on. And then let alone, for the ones who have family, I have 2 daughters that are 11 and 9, and they've been really good about me and my coaching career and supporting me. But, there's times that I'll be out of town and I have to FaceTime my daughters because we're coaching in Florida or Atlanta or whatever. So, I really wish that people would respect that and understand, for me, I'm a non-parent coach because, again, I have 2 daughters and they all like sports. They like dance. So, for baseball, I'm coaching kids that aren't mine because I want to, and I wish parents would see that sometimes. Sometimes you pull a kid a little early. It's like, hey, why doesn't he like my kid? It's never that case. I've always said I've been doing this for a long time. I've coached thousands of kids. I can count on 1, maybe 2 fingers kids that I ever had an issue of like not getting along with, and in my opinion, those 1 or 2 are in that one.
Are you a little sad that your daughters aren't in sports, or is that a good thing for you and in your household?
It's good and bad. They love dance, and they're really good at it. So, I mean, I love supporting them with it. They gave it a go at softball, but they would rather paint their nails and do that stuff. And so I'm like, hey, as long as you guys are happy, I'm good with it.
Yeah. So
when they did do
how do you,
softball, though, I do remember walking them in. I walked in and I said, I am not coaching. You ain't gonna hear a peep out of me. I'm sitting in the outfield. You can bat them last every game. I don't care.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. What's a parent trap? Like, what's a trap that parents go through right now? I mean, obviously, the competitive landscape of sports is, it's competitive, right? For the obvious, it's expensive. There's a lot of things that they can do. There's a lot that's offered. What's a trap that you feel like in this, world of dynamic sports that parents fall into, that we can help prevent them from doing?
They kind of all tie together, but the biggest one that I see would be getting false information, false promises, that kind of thing. Especially with high school guys, the amount of emails that these guys get, hey, you're invited to an elite invite only camp. I tell this story all the time, but I get invite. I'm 36 years old with 52 screws in my right shoulder, and I still get recruiting emails all the time. I'm like, and so I'll call some of these coaches up and I'm like, I didn't know you guys were after 36-year-old guys with no eligibility and a bum shoulder. And so helping parents, for me, it's respecting their money is a big thing, so having kids go to camps, knowing that they're not going to get offers or the looks they want, steering them in the right direction. And, the other one with social media and just all that is, you can log on to YouTube and Twitter or X, and you can see a million baseball videos today. Some are really good, some are really bad. So helping navigate and just, I always tell parents, especially kids I train or coach, the kids I train because they're younger. I'm like, if you ever have a question about some of this stuff, hey, I get texts all the time. Hey, I saw this drill. Do you like this or do you not? Sometimes I'll be like, I've never seen that before, but I actually do like it. Or, but you can get some stuff, and that can really derail a player, if you're not careful with what you're doing. And so just it's helping them navigate, again, we've all been around this game for a long time. So trying to use the knowledge. I always use this from The Pursuit of Happiness, but he says it in that's one of my favorite movies. But he's like, I'm one of those. If I don't know the answer, I know if I can find it, and that's for me. I might not know it. I'll call up a few of my buddies or whatever. Hey, what are we doing with this drill? What are we doing with that? And just using the resources and knowledge to help some of these families that are new to this sport or whatnot.
So, I mean, as an instructor and a coach, what's there may not be the right balance, but what do you feel is the right balance between, cage time and instruction and the number of games, someone should play within a given year? And this is obviously just a baseball, softball question here,
no,
or maybe even a baseball one.
So what I've noticed with the youth team is they're going towards just playing and not practicing nearly as much. I think doing in-season practices is a huge piece, especially for 10, 11-year-old kids. Tournaments are cool and they're fun to win, but I mean, it's about developing these kids. That's the big thing. So with that, with training, I'm big on not overdoing it. And again, that doesn't really help me business wise, but I would rather have a client for 3 to 4 years and do it right than rush it. And, they feel kind of like, fool's gold or something like that, so I'll have some, and, they'll ask me, hey, should we do this? And I'm like, that's too much. I'll say, hey, maybe we need to do a little bit more. And then the thing that I'm the biggest on, which I think is the easiest one to train, is from the youth side. I just notice a lot of kids aren't watching baseball, on TV or anything. And I always tell you can be tired and rest. You can sit in your basement, just watch 20, 30 minutes of baseball, watch a pro game, watch a college game. I'm blessed in Omaha. We have the College World Series here. So I think that in the whole world, being able to watch that and, hey, how does this shortstop hold this guy on? If these are the best guys at that level, 11-year-old me should be learning that kind of stuff. But, I've found the ones that still continue to watch the game on TV. And again, I'm not, I watch baseball all the time because that's just what I'm boring, but just watching a little bit and, okay, what does this guy do? I'm a big Cubs fan. And so me and my brothers, growing up and we would go in the backyard and we would emulate. So I'd be back there doing Sammy Sosa swing all the time. That's learned how to do my hands correctly, just from kind of messing around, seeing what one of the pro guys I saw on TV was doing.
Now I know why I like you so much. So I'm a Cubs fan as well. I grew up in the Chicagoland area and been a Cubs fan my whole life. So makes a lot of sense now. Makes a lot of sense. What's something that just keeps you up at night? What's that? I know. Hopefully that keeps it up. But what's a question? What's that thing at 2:00 in the morning when you wake up in the middle of the night, 3 a.m, that kind of just keeps you awake? So what's kind of one of those maybe ethical dilemmas or tough decisions that you have that keep you up at night?
I'm fortunate because at the level that we play at, for the most part, for team wise, with the prospects and our Specs National, we have good talent, and we our teams are pretty good. Sometimes you pull a kid a little early in a game on the mound and we end up losing it, or just some of those second guessing decisions, oh shoot, should I have left him in? Should I have pulled him? Should I pinch hit this kid? And that's just the competitive side with me. I'm never satisfied. I try to do as much research on, what I do good and what I don't do right, and try to attack the stuff I don't do right. So I'm ever evolving. And just the biggest one is when you have players that are putting in a lot of work and really, you can see they're really close, but they're not getting that, they're not getting it. And so you can see their confidence going down, and you just kind of have to hold them up like, hey, you're close, man, you're close. And that's on the flip side of, what keeps me up. This is what's the most exciting part is, working with, I don't even know the number of kids I work with training wise. It's in the several hundreds, but getting the text of, hey, Timmy went 4 for 4. Really good one that I had this summer. I have a 12-year-old kid who his dad brought him in to hit with me. I've worked with him a little bit over the years. He's a good kid, good family. And like 3 hours after that hitting lesson, his dad sends me a video and he hit a home run. And I'm in the middle of a game and I'm like, oh man, all right, cool. 10, 15 minutes later, his dad sends me another video. He's like, well, he just hit another one. That was about a month ago. And I think since that point, Paxton's hit around 8 or 9 home runs over the fence. And these are the first 8 or 9 of his career. So, it's getting that stuff of like, hey, all right, it's starting to pay off. And, I always say once they hit the ground running, then look out, because who knows where we're going to end up.
Yeah. And you might have answered this question, just right there, but is that how you've seen coaching evolve over the last 10 years, from when you started coaching to where you are now? How has coaching evolved? And is that it? Is it technology? Is it video? Or are there some other things?
That's a great question. There's both good and bad, in my opinion. And one of the biggest things that I'm big on is a lot of these youth, specifically the under 14 coaches, are usually dads or brothers that are helping. And so I'm like, we got to be careful about being super hard on us. For me, I'm not, a lot of these guys are dads just helping out, just trying to help their son and his friends or whatever. Technology is both a good and bad thing. I've seen 9U teams run practices with 8 pocket radars set up and TrackMan or not Rapsodos going. I'm like, we don't need that. That's a bit much. But, for me, again, I'm a big visual learner. And so using video has been huge for me. I do a lot of video. I spend several hours a day cutting it up. I hit with almost all my hitters. We use blast motion, which I know you're obviously very familiar with. And just using that stuff to see, hey, what are my hands doing? How far am I swinging? Am I extending through the ball? And so the technology for that's really good, but tempering it and knowing when it's the right thing. I would say one of the things that, and I'm guilty of this too. I think any coach of any sport's guilty of it. If not, then they're a better man than me, but taking the ego out of it. You get in games and you face another coach that kind of rubs you the wrong way or whatever. And you start creating a little bit of an ego, and they're like, well, I want to beat this kid. I always use this one, like, my playing days are long over. Nobody cares about my playing days. It's about them and their playing days. So having to reset myself back personally and going, okay, this isn't about me. This is about these 15, 16 guys I got here. But I've seen it go both ways. And again, I'm guilty of it too. So I try to get better each year at it, bro.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. We try to say the same thing to our kids, right? It's about getting better every day or every week or, in our situations every year. So that's awesome. But I totally empathize with your comments of there is that one coach who's in my brain right now. I know exactly what he looks like. I know his stature. I know his mannerisms. And I have always dreaded playing him. I hated playing him and always wanted to beat him. So I know those guys. I know exactly what they look like.
Coach, 19-year-old me was, oh yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, 19-year-old me was definitely a different animal too. What's your thoughts on early specialization? Like, what does that mean to you? And is there a place for it? What do you got?
I was a multiple sport guy. I was a sport guy in high school all 4 years, which frankly I don't think can be done nowadays. Your high end, for us, Class A is the biggest classification. Like, I just don't think you do 3 sport anymore. Now, just sports, and it depends on the age. I'm a big component of play as many sports as you can. I got my baseball offers after one of my football games because I broke up running and knew that I was athletic enough, so seeing, in basketball helped me with agility, change of direction, things like that. And so, I like how for my personal playing career, how that tied everything, seeing kids, A good example for me was if you would have went to 12 or 13-year-old me and asked me what I wanted to do, I would have said, I want to quit baseball and I want to focus on basketball. But my parents would let me. 2 years later, I grow 14 inches in a year and I love baseball. I don't want to play basketball anymore. So I'm like, cutting the cord too early, you can limit a lot of chances. And I always use this example, which is 100% a true story. But again, I didn't even want to go out for high school baseball. My mom actually had to bribe me to go out for high school baseball. And then here I am, 36 years old, and that's all I do full time. And so I look back on that of like, if I would have gave it up too early, none of this other stuff would have happened, which is kind of scary to look back on.
Yeah, absolutely. I love asking that question because, I think it's easy to say early specialization is a bad thing, but we don't define what early is. And we also don't define what specialization is. And we haven't really defined, um, how sports have evolved over the last, 30, 40 years. So I think I like your answer. I'm not sure it's right. I'm not sure anyone knows it's right. And I think it's probably not, it's going to be different for every single individual player and athlete. But I do think the games, sports have evolved and specialization has evolved as well. So appreciate that response. Sounds like your
For sure.
parents played a pretty important role in your development. Talk a little bit about that and in the role that your parents played, and the role that other parents play, both on the what could be good and possibly set them in the wrong direction as well.
No, I mean, yeah, my whole family's, we eat, breathe sports. We have since, we were all born. And my two brothers also coach or have coached in the past. Both my parents coach, but it was just one of those growing up at 3, 4 years old. I knew we were going to my brother's baseball games and I was going to play wiffle ball and do all that. And then the youngest brother, my older brothers didn't come to my games as much, but again, you just, for me, I always say since I was 4 years, baseball's like it's weird for me. Going to the fields every Saturday or Sunday went for a bracket game or stuff like that. That's what we grew up in. And again, just being in different sports, watching sports, like we just became competitive. And, again, I'm the youngest of three boys. So, I got pushed in the corner a little bit and I had to come out scrapping a few times. So just that competitive aspect we had growing up, I feel like helped me tremendously.
That's awesome. Couple final questions for you, and then I'll kind of leave it up to you to see if you have anything, for me or anything else you want to add. But, my final two questions for you are, what's maybe the best piece of advice that any other coach has ever provided you, whether that be on the playing field or as a coach today, what best advice coach has given you? And then now as a coach, what advice do you give others?
So I have the first answer is going to answer both of these questions. It was actually one of my really good friends, shared this with me years ago. So he wasn't a coach, but he was a Division I tight end type player. But, one day we were working out and I was like, Mike, I'm not feeling it. Can you motivate me? Yeah. He was a motivator type guy. And so this was said to me by a really good friend, and I use this all the time, but it's probably my favorite quote. But we would always say, training's like moving dirt. Some days you have a shovel, some days you have a spoon. But as long as dirt keeps getting moved, progress is being made. So I always tell guys, move dirt. One thing for me, about 6 or 7 days a week, it just mentally, it's what I like. Some days I don't have it, but if I show up and I just put my best foot forward, I'd be better off than if I didn't go. And especially for these younger guys, understanding that, again, you go 0 for 4, it's not the end of the world. Maybe that school was there and they don't want you, or maybe they do. There's another school that's going to come watch you tomorrow. Just keep moving forward and just keep moving. Especially for, some of those younger guys that are further away, or even, going to the high school guys that are getting close to their high school careers being done. They can press and do all that. It's easy to lift up. It's hard to just peel back and just kind of trust what, and then just of one of the biggest things that I say I do personally, a coach, or try to tell any coach. But as a leader, the team follows my lead. I figured that out really quick. So again, going back to 19-year-old me coaching, when I would scream and bark and lose my cool, my team would do the same thing. When I would stay calm and collect, my team stay calm and collect. And trust me, it's a lot easier said than done. But, and there's times, we were in Arkansas 3-4 weeks ago, and I had to get into a couple umpires. I didn't get thrown out though, so I kept it cool. But being able to calm your team in situations, in one of the big baseball specifically, if my shortstop boots a ground ball and I bark for shortstop, come on, you got to have that. That's not going to help him play better. That's going to make him press and panic, and then it makes everybody around it. So, for me, it's just, hey, next pitch, move on, next pitch. It's one of the biggest things I just always say. I don't care if you just threw the best pitch or the worst pitch of your life, you can't carry it over. You got to do it again. So, just keeping that going. And, again, as a guy who's in charge and a leader, it's my responsibility to manage the emotions of my team in both ways.
Excellent advice. Appreciate that. And probably yet another thing I'm going to steal from you. Any final thoughts for us?
I just appreciate you having me on, and I love what you guys are doing to help just educating families of all sports. So, I was so pumped that you invited me on, and I can't thank you enough.
Absolutely. I appreciate you, moving dirt with us. Hopefully we made an impact with some families, and, I look forward to, keeping in touch with you and helping grow the business or grow the sport, and growing our business as well. So thanks for your time. Thanks for everything.
Absolutely,
And
man.
appreciate having us on or being on.
All right. Thanks, man.